Thank you very much for giving us your precious time. In one of your recent interviews, and exactly with the Telegraph, you described the reasons behind leaving England and joining the YPG thoroughly. But did you have any imagination of the situation regarding the military and the social aspects on the ground?
I have to say, I wasn't 100% aware of everything that was going on in Syria, and in particular Rojava. For me, this was about immediately doing the right thing, fighting ISIS, showing my internationalism, my solidarity with the people that were suffering, and I wanted really to go out and actually really learn about who was fighting, what people were doing, what people's needs were and what they wanted. And being in Rojava for me was just an education. It was as if I opened a door in my mind and I started learning a lot more about the Kurds, about what they're trying to achieve and what their goals are and what they can do for all of Syria.
Weren't you scared about the situation there, your personal life?
Yeah, well, I was scared in many different places all around Syria. I've been in very difficult scenarios where I've been ambushed, I've had friends die around me, I've been caught in IED blasts, and I've had snipers shoot at me. So there's been many occasions where I've thought to myself, wow, I am terrified. But at the same time, if I was incredibly terrified, if I couldn't function out there, I would just go home and I would never come back. But the fact that I kept coming back shows you that I was absolutely determined to keep going, to keep fighting, to keep standing in solidarity. And at the end of the day, one thing I've never doubted is the morality of what I do. Like, we are fighting a brutal evil that is murdering people, and we're creating a system of government that's genuinely progressive and democratic. So the stakes here are enormous. If we lose Syria, we lose millions of women and children. But if we win, we get a chance to not only rebuild Syria, but actually start changing how the politics of the entire region functions.
Going back to the interview with the Telegraph, you said, I'm citing here, the most impressive thing about the YPG is the ability to move and go into areas regardless of its religious, tribal or ethnic background, and then relinquish power and give it back to the community in the form of local councils. In your opinion, how do they overcome all obstacles and contradictions, and what is the basis of these actions? I mean, the thought or the paradigm?
Well, one of the things that's quite remarkable is volunteers come from around the world, and many of them are former servicemen. They fought in Afghanistan and Iraq for the American and British militaries. And these people, for all the billions, hundreds of billions of dollars that are spent by these countries on their military sort of industrial system and on their militaries, generally speaking, these people they don't have the same relationship with the local population than, let's say, the YPG and the SDF has over the local population. These people are treated like liberators. These people are welcomed with open arms by the civilians, whereas other countries have struggled to show themselves as liberators and struggled to show themselves as a new way for these people to live their lives. And that's what's impressed me the most, was really that with the limited resources, the YPG and the SDF have managed to convince people that power really is in their hands, that their future is determined by them and their actions and what they want to do, and that they really are just there to defeat ISIS and show them that democracy, secular values, progressive values such as gender equality, these things are wonderful things. They're going to rebuild their lives and actually improve their lives for the long run.
And what is the secret behind this ability, do you think?
Well, I think the secret is, I suppose, the fact that it's an indigenous, local revolution. That these aren't Western ideals implanted on the region. And that's one thing that many people in America and Britain can't get their head around. They think they've got all the answers for democracy. They think that a Western-type democracy can fit like a hand in a glove in the Middle East. And what's quite impressive is that the Kurdish people, no one's suffered like the Kurdish people. They've had their language repressed, they've had their people and their democracy and their culture repressed. And they've seen how not to live life. They've seen how horrible life can be in all the different countries, whether it's Turkey or Iran or others. So now that the Kurds are in control, now that the Kurds are the ones fighting back and being victorious, they know the natural reaction of Turkey and some people in the West is to think that the Kurds are going to dominate people now, because suddenly who was once down, the man who was once down suddenly is the man at the top. But actually the Kurds, now that they've found themselves at the top, have said to themselves, this is not the way. We're going to break this cycle of violence. We're going to break the way of doing things and actually start thinking about the future. So it's really incredible to see and quite touching as an observer.
You have already spoken comprehensively in many interviews of YPG and the Kurdish successes on the ground, either militarily or socially, and sometimes also politically or in other aspects. My question now is, do you have any criticisms or objection to the administration or the military forces there?
I have no objection at all to the Syrian Federation, the Federation of Northern Syria, and all the relevant groups that make up the SDF. It's been a difficult and challenging time. That's one thing that people need to understand, is that the SDF is liberating an entire region. It's having to get people together and work together effectively against an enemy that's incredibly powerful, that's been funded by regional countries, regional powers, that have captured a huge amount of weaponry, billions of dollars worth of equipment, and they have thousands of fanatical, crazy fighters fighting on their behalf. So the odds on many occasions have been stacked against the SDF. But what makes them successful, really, is the fact that they're also fighting for a cause, as well as Daesh. They're fighting for democracy, equality, they're fighting for their homes. And of course it's going to be difficult. Of course they're going to have to negotiate. Of course they're going to have to come up with new ideas. If something doesn't work, we'll try something else. And this is a revolution, it's a struggle at the end of the day. So I think more people around the world need to recognise that. And instead of standing on the fringes and criticise wherever they think they can criticise, they should actually get involved and actually start supporting, and actually that will stop any mistakes happening in the future.
Now you introduce yourself as an ambassador of Rojava in Europe. Could you please elucidate this in more details, and what are the heretofore achievements, what are your plans for the future?
I think it's really important that international volunteers come home and they start telling the truth about what they've seen on the ground. They need to start utilising their privilege. I'm privileged as a British man who has left his safe country and gone to another country to experience what their life is like and what their challenges are, because they're very different places. And so the solutions are very different as well. So I didn't come with answers. I just came wanting to help and to learn from the people on the ground. And I've learned enormous things. So coming home, I need to start communicating with the British government and with other people that the solution to the Syrian crisis exists, and it's on the ground right now in Syria, and it's the SDF.
Okay. You're invited now to the PYD Conference, annual conference in the Netherlands. What should PYD do to maintain the achievements in Rojava at political level, and what should PYD do in Europe for consolidating these achievements, in your opinion?
So the PYD is growing as an organisation. It's got a lot of support in Rojava. It's doing incredible things with communal sort of projects to rebuild the economy and everything else, and to represent people properly. I think they need to perhaps start communicating their successes much more effectively in the West. Start telling people in America, Washington, Moscow, London, that they do represent the feelings and the ambitions of the Kurdish people of Syria. So if we really want peace in Rojava and in Northern Syria, then we need to really engage with them. We need to invite them to Geneva, we need to invite them to Sochi, and we need to give them whatever support they need to get their projects done.
Sorry for interrupting you. What do you mean by more successfully in Europe?
Well, what I mean by that is really just perhaps focusing more on media, start opening up offices more in different countries around Europe, and perhaps even employing lobbyists, sort of getting lobbyists to talk to major political figures, inviting them to conferences and things like today at the Congress, and really just show them, open their eyes to an entire world, which is Kurdistan.
Okay, my last question is, you've experienced a lot, I guess, in Rojava. During your fight against ISIS, what is the most striking thing you have ever seen in Rojava?
I think I've seen all kinds of things over the years, and I mean, some good, some bad. I've seen the best in people, and I've seen the worst in people. The worst being the Islamic State, The best being the people who are protecting their homes, people who are rebuilding their communities, people who are fighting for a future for their children. And these people inspire me every single day. So the fact is, when I drive through Rojava, it feels like the air is simmering. It feels like there's so much energy in the country. People are actually really excited about the future for the first time, that Assad is now gone. We can start healing after years of a dictatorship. We can also start healing our communities after years of the brutal Islamic State. So the future of Rojava is incredibly bright, and we need the whole world to come together and actually start supporting the local groups that are representing people, and we've got a real chance for peace, I think.
Thank you very much for giving us time.
My pleasure.